that noise? It's not a soundboard, but that is the sound of breaking glass. As today, we talk about glass ceilings, gender bias, representation, and more on today's TLD cast. I'm Cara North, and today I'm joined by an international panel of the best and brightest women in L&D. And I am honored to say that I know each of these wonderful ladies. They bring so many different perspectives and experiences to this important conversation. If today is your first TLDC, please drop in the chat who you are. We'd love to hear a little bit about you. And we'd love for you to be a part of this conversation. We meet here every day, Monday through Friday, starting at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 4 p.m. UK time. And when we're not here streaming live, we have a Slack channel that's open 24/7 a day, 24/7. And if you get value out of today's conversation, we would love for you to become a member. Don't think we have cards yet for that, but you still get a lot of great benefits. And today, thank you, Craig, for dropping those links in the chat. I just want to start by saying that many of the topics that we're going to talk about will include examples and cases of hardships that we have faced. But I want to reiterate that the purpose of today's conversation is not necessarily about the war stories and the negativity, but we're really focused on the future. How can we make this a better place for everybody? How can work benefit from diversity for all of us? And we will have a dedicated time at the end for Q&A. So please use the Q&A feature in Crowdcast if that's something that you want to add in a question. If we can do it live, we'll answer in real time. But if not, we will have time at the end. And our panel will be talking about many resources and articles. We have put them all in one place for you. And I don't know if I give Craig this link or not, but it is, let me see if I can pop it in there. Yeah, let me add one H there. It's a Dropbox folder for everybody, so you're welcome to look at that. And that has a bunch of the links that we're talking about today. And with that, I want to introduce who we have in the boxes. So I'll start with Joe Cook.
Hey there, really nice to be here. Very much, everybody. Really excited to be on such a diverse panel with all the experiences, international, the different types of work that we've got. You probably know me because I come along every now and then and type in the chat window and occasionally jump in when Brent's got no other guests lined up. I've worked in learning and development for about 20 years in a variety of different roles, companies, sectors, organisation size. And what I now do is I run my own company where I employ one other person and I focus on virtual classroom train the trainer, and I'll put some more information in the chat.
All right, perfect. Myra, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're in international seas. I'm Myra Roldan. I've been an instructional designer for, I lose count, I think it's over 20 years. I have worked on a number of projects with a number of clients, small to large, Fortune 100, Fortune 500. I also had my own consulting business and am now with Amazon. I joined them to launch a startup program, which is really exciting. It's just another venture, another notch in my belt. I think that all of my experiences over the years have exposed me to a number of cultures and some diversity issues that always seem to resonate across different industries, including L&D, right? So I'm really excited to really talk to you guys about that and share some experiences. And I started Myra Monday. I'm going to plug myself, right? So Myra Monday, I post a question on Mondays on Twitter, and everyone shares their experiences. And that's been really inspirational also, and helping Cara to build a community of practice. So let's keep it going.
You're getting ahead of me. I was going to call out Myra Monday a little bit later today, but that's all good. And last but certainly not least, the lovely Toddi, if you want to introduce yourself.
So I think I'm going to claim Toddi Tuesday. Just letting you know. In my house, we have fault days. So like Tuesday, everything that goes wrong might be my fault. So I'm Toddi Norum, and I actually started down the training path in about 2006. I was a tech writer before that. I started working like immediately in what I would consider kind of a male-dominated field. I worked in the defense contracting industry. So I started in 2006 working with Raytheon, doing development of training for the military. Migrated over to working with iRobot for 3 years, developing training for the Army, which wasn't all men. It was primarily men, but it was definitely an area that was occupied more by men out in the field, because I worked with a lot of the field service reps. In 2012, the government quit buying the robotic systems that we were actually selling and training on. So I started doing a little bit more consulting, which was a lot of fun. Learned more about development and did quite a bit of project management, large-scale project management for go-lives for learning management systems, integrations, things like that. I ended up working for a platform for the last year, and then I was unemployed for a little while and out looking, which was an interesting thing to happen for about 4 months. And I just recently rolled over to working for a very, very large, well-known health insurance company. And I'm part of an all-female team now, which is really cool. And we're working primarily with client training. So it's been an interesting path.
Excellent. All right. Without further ado, just again to share the game plan, we're going to have people rotating in and out of the boxes talking about different topics. First topic of the day, we're going to be talking about gender bias in the workplace. I know, scary stuff, right? Joe Cook, you have had the opportunity to talk to Donald Taylor, who's printed a couple different things about this particular topic. Why don't you share some of those insights with us?
Absolutely. So here is a link to what Donald has published in 2018. And actually, there's some stuff that he published in 2015. So it's an interesting kind of comparison if you want to go on that as well and have a look at that. And I have a blog handy for that I will, there we go. It's a blog that I wrote. So totally kind of sharing my own work there, but it's got a link to his 2015 work as well. And there's some really something that's in there is not surprising, I think, probably to anybody, which is the basically the lower end of the scale, the more women there are in the job, the higher end of the scale, then actually kind of the less women that there are in various different proportions. And that changes across sectors and company size. So one of the things that he pulled out is actually the larger companies, which I think was 1,000 people plus, then yeah, something like that, then actually you had much more chance of becoming senior. That actually the smaller the organization, the more that dropped down. And we had quite a long conversation about this. And one of the things that I thought was interesting and piqued my interest as a small business owner myself is, well, why do we go into small businesses? Is that because of that glass ceiling? Is it because of work-life balance? Maybe it's having kids, or is it that kind of narrative that leads us there? And so Don digged into some of the data, which he actually hasn't published, which I've got scrawled in my awful notebook. Look at how badly that scrawl is. But what we found is that even in the smaller companies of 20 to 100 people, it was still 75% male dominated. And in the companies where it was even smaller than that, less than 20 people, it was still 70% of men. And I thought that was kind of interesting as well, that difference in the genders and there's pay gap in there, which I'm not even really going to cover that much. And there are a couple of conclusions that Don came up with. One is in my blog, and I'm not going to repeat that. You can go and read that. But the other thing that actually we didn't put in the blog so much was the idea about culture and about how that is really making an impact. And it was around bias and unconscious bias. And one of the things that Don was saying is, it's nature and it's natural that we like people like us. So therefore, a natural tendency is that we're going to recruit people like us, and we want people in our teams around us. And so therefore, what I was hearing is actually we need to be aware of this. We could train people about it. We need to have policies around that and support, so that actually what we're not doing is making those compounding issues in things like recruitment.
all super important points. And I know that Toddi and Myra had shared that they have different dynamics and how they work. So let's actually start with Toddi. Do you care to share what you shared with us a little bit earlier about kind of the dynamics of the teams that you've been working on and interviewing in?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I didn't realize that I was in kind of an innovative space when I worked with Raytheon and iRobot, because I was actually probably the only woman on the training team for the Army robotics training that I developed. Aside from the women soldiers, I really was the only woman on the team, and I had no idea how innovative that was at the time. And I worked primarily with male field service representatives, guys that went out into the field, that went to Afghanistan to do repairs and, that kind of thing. So I had a really wonderful experience, actually, first out, and had no idea how lucky I really was, because I had guys that were Marines who were they were spot on. I mean, they were so helpful to me. I had one guy that I worked with for years named Joe, who was like my right arm. He would help me develop all the training. He would do all the testing on all the procedures that we put together. And so I was really, really fortunate. I didn't realize that there was really a bias until I no longer worked in that particular arena. And I don't know if it was because I worked in Massachusetts. So Massachusetts is very much, MIT oriented, a lot of companies that are very forward thinking in technology. And so, women as part of the technology landscape just seemed like a really logical thing to me. I found them everywhere. And I think that was maybe more of a Massachusetts mindset. After I worked there, I worked with some other MIT kind of startups and things, doing some really innovative things. Again, primarily mostly men in the industry, the engineers that I was working with. When I came to Colorado, I found that there was definitely more of at least in my perception, a bias in hiring. And so it wasn't until last fall that I was actually unemployed, and even working in Denver for the couple of platforms that I worked for, it was kind of equal, half women, half men. But when I started looking for work here in Colorado, I was looking for things that seemed like they fit me. Field service training, developing programs, managing programs for rolling out training. And I did discover that I had many more challenges here in Denver. Almost every interview that I went to was mainly men. In fact, I'd have to say the interviews that I appeared in person were always all men on the panels, which was interesting. And interestingly enough, I would get asked questions like, how long did it take you to roll out, your development projects that you were doing for iRobot? And I'd be like, well, I ran a Scrum team. I had a team of 4 people. We did it in 60 days. We rolled it out to demo it to the Army. And they sit there kind of looking a little bit glazed over at the fact that, I could go and do a VR or an AR project in 60 days with a Scrum team. And I don't know if that's what caused this, but twice I went through the interview process with teams of all men and came out on the other end with a recruiter calling me and saying, hey, they think you're not going to be challenged enough. And that might have been true. Maybe I wouldn't have been challenged in those roles, but the perception that I got was because I had done some really unique, innovative things that maybe I either intimidated them or made them think that, I wasn't going to like what they were doing. Maybe I'm not sure, that's kind of a perception thing, but, I am actually working now with an all woman team. I was selected by a female manager. I work for a VP, and he is a man leading the group, but we have a lot of women in the group. And so I'm really excited because I'm actually now working with an all female team, but it's been interesting. So
perfect segue. As I said earlier, we're going to be switching people out. So we're going to say, see you later to Joe and Toddi. And Myra, I want you to talk about the composition of your team as I bring in Tricia and Mel.
Sure. So just for background on me, I didn't start off as an instructional designer. I was actually a systems engineer, which is a very male-dominated industry, right? So Joe had posted a question about, did you have to work really hard at the beginning of your career? For me, that was a definite yes. My first job as a systems engineer was with IBM. So I have a bigger disadvantage, not bigger, but I have an additional disadvantage that my primary language is Spanish, right? So I'm a Latina. coming from a small island. I grew up on Puerto Rico. And so, el momento que empiezo a hablar español, todo el mundo piensa que uno tiene menos inteligencia, ¿verdad? So I had to overcome that language barrier. I know you don't know what I just said, but speaking a different language does present like a barrier, and it just, it knocks you down the rung a little, right? As people interact with you. And so my first job, I worked in a data center with 30 guys. It's 30 guys and me. And I remember being told, oh, you can just sit over there and look at the logs and you know, paint your nails or whatever you girls do. That to me was really shocking. I've encountered that throughout my career, right? So now a lot's changed, and we have this generation of women that are entering the workforce who are fantastic. And I have the privilege right now of working with a mainly female team, which presents another dynamic, right? Because now we're all like the future's female, and we lift each other up. And I think that a lot of the problems that we need to overcome are unconscious biases, right? So things that we don't realize that we're biased against. And you may not realize that it's coming up in your daily interaction. Women, and it's not only men, so the bias and the inequity and the, you know, does not come from like men saying, oh, you're not good enough. It comes from women saying that also because of our perceptions of each other. And I think that's something that we need to work on just as a community. And so, you know, working in this mainly female team right now, it's kind of funny, right? Because they're all millennials. I am a Gen Xer working with millennials, and so there's biases there. I'm like the old lady on the team, and so it's just really interesting how a lot of these biases come across. And so I really say, like, we really need to focus on equity, right? And equity is about understanding each other's situation and what we need to do to accommodate each other, because it's through that equity that we'll gain equality. So equity is the means, equality is the end. So.
All great points, and especially what you said about the women kind of tearing each other down. I mean, I have experienced that I don't know how many times, and absolutely blows my brain, because my personal and professional mantra is blowing out someone else's candle does not make yours burn any brighter. I think there's a lot of success to be had for everyone out there in the world, and I applaud anybody doing anything great. So it's very frustrating. So switching gears, let's talk about that for a little bit. So as women, do we feel more compelled to share what we're working on in this industry? Or do we feel more compelled to present at conferences? And I know that both Tricia and Mel have pretty strong opinions about that. So whoever wants to discuss that.
I guess I can go. So I think the thing about sharing just in general on social media and at conferences is kind of like the feeling that I got, like, at least when like I very first started my career, not that I'm like super far along in my career or anything, but when I had first started, it's almost kind of like, it feels like you're like jumping off a cliff almost, like you're afraid to do it, like you're like skydiving or something. And like and I still kind of feel like that today. Like when I share some of my work to like LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm hovering over the share button, and I'm like always like, do I do it? Like I do it, like I get to that point, but like I'm always like, should I be sharing this? Like I second guess myself. Like I wish I didn't have that feeling. And that's the thing, like I've gotten a lot better at it, but it took a really long time to get there.
Yeah, and so Mel and I have had this conversation about sharing and women needing to have a larger representation at conference. When you look at the conference speaker roster, right, like we are underrepresented, and it's a lot of it has to do with the fear of being judged, right? Like we're afraid to put ourselves out there because we don't want people to break us down. What do you think, Tricia?
I totally agree. And then for me, especially can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes.
So then for me, especially, not only fear of being judged and such a male dominated space at conferences speaking, but then women of color. There's not very many of us at all speaking. It's very rare. I go to conference and I really do count up the number of people of color that I see, and I'm like, oh my God, there's 10 of us. 10. I saw, this is so weird. And I don't know why that is. I do know one time, I've only spoken at one conference once, and then the next year I went back to that conference and there was another woman of color. Her name was Christina. And she said she spoke because she saw me speak the year before and was like, well, she looks like me, and if she can do it, I can do it. So that's, I think, was the biggest compliment. I don't remember what I spoke on in my session, or I don't think it went very well, but you know, I helped someone else. And to me, that's the most important thing. That's actually why I'm in this field. So there's that. And by the way, to talk, about working in male-dominated areas, when you look like I do, I'm actually 50 years old, and I look like a baby, right? And I worked at IBM. I worked at Raytheon. I was on a project at Raytheon. When I was at IBM, I was always on oil and gas projects and writing training for engineers, the engineering part of SAP or tax, oil and gas, and it is hard sometimes for people to look at you when they're like, you look like you're a kid, and who are you to tell me how to do my job, Miss Consultant person who's just going to be going and won't be here later, who looks like you're 12. And it's one of those things, and we've all gotten used to it. And people ask us, how did we get used to it, or what do we do? And I don't know how I got used to it. It's just my life. It just is, which is probably not the world's best answer, is it?
No,
Tricia,
it's
I don't
great. Go ahead, Myra.
It's not a matter of getting used to it. I think it's a matter of adapting, right? And just not caring, like just kind of throwing care to the wind and being like, whatever, right?
I don't listen.
It's totally true. And I get the same thing as Tricia because I look a lot younger than I am. And so it's like really hard to earn respect. And so like I've been in meetings with a lot of senior people, and me sitting there like, yeah, you guys might know like that I have some kind of like respect in the industry or something like that, but they don't. And like the first thing is your appearance and what you look like. And I've had managers tell me, not recently, but in the past, you should wear more makeup, make yourself look older, like things like that. And it's really hard. It's really difficult. And it makes you feel like you're not worth it, like as yourself, like being you.
And I don't even hear those comments. I mean, I truly, if somebody says it to me, I think maybe I learned the stare from my mom. Because the stare where you just stare at someone, it's like, open your mouth. I dare you. Say it. Come on. I dare you. And if you just stare them down sometimes like that, or don't respond at all, don't laugh, don't giggle, don't turn your head away, just look at them. That seems to be the most powerful response I've ever been able to
get a demonstration of that.
That's a good one.
That's my mom's stare. Yeah.
But maybe
go ahead, Mel.
Oh, I was just going to say, but maybe it's about like, how can we help each other get through those types of situations? Like, when people make comments that are ridiculous, that make you seem like you're not trustworthy or respected or know what you're talking about. Like, how do we help each other to get through those things? And maybe it's what Tricia just said, like sharing, like, yes, do the stare, like do these things. Like,
and oftentimes when I would give the stare, another woman in the room would say, no, you don't get to ask that, or that's not an appropriate comment question, blah, blah, blah. It's just, sometimes I always try my hardest to assume good intent. I try to think these people are not being dodo heads on purpose. That's where I try to start from. And if we all do that and we all help each other, it's easier because then you're not fighting the fight alone. And I've had guys stand up for me too. So.
Yeah, I think we really need to focus on mentoring more women, though.
Yeah.
You know,
not waiting to be asked to be a mentor, but just helping people out, being the unspoken mentor. You know, just take somebody under your wing without them even knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so with the Learn call for speaker, what I did is I blasted out. We have a mail group on our Amazon line, and so I blasted out to our Learn Design and just offered to like, hey, I'll help you. I'll read your proposal before you submit it. And so I've met a lot of great people that way, and I've been able to mentor some people. I did the same thing on LinkedIn. I think I've read so far like 10 proposals, just because I think it's important, right? So I think being able to offer yourself without any expectation of getting anything in return, and just being genuine about things, I think that's important also because it's not just a matter of being good at what you do. It's a matter of being good at sharing what you do. And I think that's where we stand an opportunity to really raise each other up in the industry and really kind of tackle some of these inequities that we're experiencing.
Now, I have a question for you guys. Do you find it harder to share what you do in times of stress or busyness? Because when I most need to share what I'm doing is when I'm least likely to do that. Does that hold true for everybody? Or is that just one of my weird quirks, shall we say?
So I would say that I'm not at work 24/7. I may work long hours, but I do have time in the evening where that's where I'll share whatever I'm going to share, or on the weekends, and I'll just put things up on, to share them later and just set it up. So I have to just eventually just hit, share or post. I really feel that a lot of us need to learn time management also. And I don't know, if you guys have been following the Twitter chat that we've been going on, I'm a huge Pomodoro kind of technique follower. And so I think that's really important, is that we learn how to manage our time also so we can achieve the things that we want to do, both in work and play, right, in personal life, because I work hard, but I also play hard.
And that's my favorite mentoring thing. No is not a bad word. If there's one thing I want to teach women to do, it's to say no. No is what's going to keep you sane and keep you alive, literally. You cannot say yes.
Yeah, I tend to use a lot of my parenting techniques. So I raised 3 girls, right? 3 very bright girls. And so I employ my parent techniques. I'm not a ninja mom or a helicopter mom. I do have some project management skills that I employ with my kids. With myself and anyone that I mentor.
Well, so Tricia just recently, because I've been very stressed out lately, she kind of reminded me it's good. It's okay to say no. And I get so guilty because I do post so often on social media and different things like that about instructional design and what I'm working on, those types of things. And so I often overcommit myself to things, and I feel so guilty when I can't say yes to people. It's the worst feeling ever. I'm like, or if I forget to respond to an email, or I had someone just send me an email yesterday and I forgot to respond to her months ago and I totally forgot about it. Like, it's just, there's so many things going on, and I'm like, I don't mean for it to come off as like I want to have time for everyone, and it's like impossible to do everything, and it's just so hard. Yeah, it really is.
I'm reading these comments, and the words being used in here are fascinating to me. I'm fearful that something may be negative. I'm fearful that people won't like me. I'm afraid. I'm scared. I don't want to. I mean, maybe it's because I was raised with boys. I mean, everybody I grew up with were boys, but I don't use words like this. You just say it. You just say no. You're not going to hurt people's feelings. Just say no. It's an okay word. It really, really is. And to be afraid that people might not like you or might not, whatever, then if you're that afraid that they won't like you, you don't need them in your you don't need them in your life. I mean,
it's one of those things. So like a good scenario would be, and this is like through LinkedIn. Someone was like, can I just hop on a call with you? It wasn't a salesperson, just someone in the community. And we can just like, I want to talk about this specific topic. Like, I just want to get some more information on it. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm so busy, maybe in a few weeks. And they just kept pushing on me. And they're like, well, why can't you do it? Like, just 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm really sorry. And like, it's when I just get so frustrated when people can't accept that. And I'm like, I just don't like, if I keep adding 15 minutes onto my day, it's like, I'm already up until so late, but I feel guilty, and I'm thinking about it right now in this situation.
No, you gave the person an answer. You gave them an answer. You said no in a few weeks. They're pushing you. There's nothing for you to feel guilty about. Just be who you are. I mean, would a guy feel guilty?
That's the thing. Yeah,
they wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Yeah.
Why?
But you know, but I think that comes. It's so ingrained in us from childhood, right? Like when you think about a lot of
not
these.
Me. The boys. I learned how to take a punch.
Yeah, but for a lot of people, for a lot of girls, it's when we're raised. There's the girl job and there's the guy job. And I mean, I grew up on an island, and I grew up in Puerto Rico with my grandparents. And being one of the youngest, they had no energy for me anymore because they were like, oh my God, like they raised 14 kids and they had all these grandkids. So when it came to me, I was like, okay, as long as you don't kill yourself, you're good. So a lot of my boundaries were around like, don't get hurt, or I don't want to have to take you to the ERs, but everything else is game. But for a lot of girls, they don't have that, right, Toddi? So a lot of girls are taught like, you have to prepare for marriage, and you have to, like, it's okay to have a career and get an education, but your main goal is to get married and raise kids, right? So a lot of that is the bias that's generated.
This is a generation gap too, because I was born in the late 60s. So women's lib, I was growing up I can bring home the bacon and cook it too. My mom was, working on her PhD, was a full-time educator, principal of a grade school, and a room mother. And she always taught me and everybody else, my brother and my father, no. Her goal is not to get married. Her goal is to be the best person she can be.
Yeah, and I don't think it's generational. I think that's more cultural.
I'm Black. Come on.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
But then again,
because you and I are very close in age, so it's not generational. I think it's just it's cultural, right? So like,
it is. It's like, don't mess with me.
Yeah, based on your parents' upbringing and how you were raised, also. So like, I grew up with my grandparents who were very old, and my mom who was a hippie. So I had this whole clash of. And that's how you build your personalities too, right? And your personal beliefs. So based on those constraints and those, like, the box that they put you in, is how you tend to decide what you're going to, what's your role in life. And my role was never to kill myself. So that's my role in life, right? So take risks, but not take a risk that's really going to put me in like danger.
In my role, our parents raised both me and my brother to be the best person you can be. Both of you will learn to do laundry, both of you will cook dinner, both of you will clean the house. That just is because you must be a good human being, not a good boy or a good girl, but a good person.
Perfect segue. We're going to say see you later to Myra right now. I'm going to bring in Bethany, and I'll probably bring Myra back for Q&A. But let's expound a little bit more on this, Tricia, Mel. What about imposter syndrome? What do you guys think about that?
Oh man, yeah.
God.
I go through these like phases where it's like ups and downs. Like I'm like, okay, like I know what I'm talking about. This project that I'm working on is amazing. And then like I hit like a wall and like I can't figure out how to do something. And I look at other people and I'm like, wow, maybe I just really am not good. It's one of those things, and it's hard to get through. But I think just having people support And when I post and share like personal projects that I'm working on, when I post them to LinkedIn, and like having those positive comments on things, if more people can do that, it helps you continue like the projects and things you're working on. Like that, those kind of comments and support, like no one has any idea how much they help. But then on the flip side of things, like when I'm sharing and I feel imposter syndrome, I've had guys comment and send me messages like, you shouldn't be talking about this because that's not your area, or things like that. Like it's like I really love like getting the positive comments because they help to kind of get rid of all of those like negative things that are like, you shouldn't be talking about this, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're cocky, or like those types of things. Like and that's what I was talking about before, Joe. Just Joe had mentioned that in chat. So it's really for me about the positive, like giving each other positive support.
And seeing for me, the imposter syndrome, I don't speak at conferences ever. Like I said, I did one time, and because I don't feel I have anything really special to share. I do my job. I don't know, for me, it's like, doesn't everybody do this? What's so special about me? What is so different about me? So I don't. But then when I have conversations with people, they're like, oh my God, you need to share this with so many more. I'm like, but it's just life, right? So that's my imposter syndrome. Like, what is so special about me?
That is so interesting, Tricia, because I have a mentor of mine who I really look up to. She has a PhD. She's been in this field for a very, very long time. And we actually had the exact same conversation. She said, well, I'm seeing what people present on. That's just common sense to me. And I don't know what I have value to bring to it. And I said, are you kidding me? I would love to hear your war stories. I'd love to see your process. And I'd love to hear what you went through.
I've got war stories, but I don't know how many success stories, A lot of times you don't always win the war, but I've got the stories. I could give you stories all day long.
But even those are valuable, right? I mean, what'd you learn from it? What are the takeaways? I mean, that's what it's all about. So
that's what,
kudos.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it's life, but I survived. I'm still here.
All right, Bethany, you did a blog. Go ahead.
I think sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so sorry, my internet's, I'm getting everything a little bit late. But like in the blog, and kind of just for my own experience as well, because I do a lot of this, especially when I started in
When Bethany was speaking, could everybody hear her? I know on my end it was a little in and out.
Yeah, it was like choppy.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll wait till she reconnects. But Mel, why don't you talk a little bit about what imposter syndrome means to you?
Well, so for me, really, it means like when I'm working on something and I just feel like I completely don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, should I even share this? Are people going to like really judge me on the way that I do it? And so sometimes it's like something technical, like I'm doing something with XAPI and I'm like, is this the right way to do it? And actually Myra and I were sitting down. It was like probably one of the first times we hung out, and she gives very solid advice. Myra does. And she was like, does it work? And I was like, yes. And she's like, then who cares? And I was like, right, exactly. But the thing is, like with that stuff, it's really, for me, I'm like, I'm afraid that the community is going to judge me, and they'll be like, oh, you're not doing it right. And I feel like an imposter in that way. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it, but am I doing it perfect? Like, it's about perfection.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't need to be perfect. For me, it's about my imposter syndrome is not about being perfect. Yeah, I don't care if I share failure stories, because I actually think people learn most from those than anything else. For me, it's a fear of not having value. Yeah, I don't care if I'm perfect or not, because Lord knows, well, in my mind, I am perfect, because, everybody. But I know I'm not. My husband helps keep me grounded. But it's about fear of not adding value, right? I hate it when people waste my time, and I don't want to waste other people's time. That's my imposter syndrome.
And me personally, because I'm also a PhD student, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me to push out more stuff of what the field is doing and all of that. And it's really difficult to disseminate what's going on in research.
You're getting your PhD and you're doing all of this too? Are you crazy?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit crazy.
Cara has always been crazy.
You guys are amazing. I was thinking about getting a PhD, and I was like, yeah, no, too much work.
Do it. I highly encourage just trying it out. But Bethany is back, and thank you, Sean. I am definitely crazy. But let's talk a little bit about the blog you did for TLDC and some of the research you've done about imposter syndrome.
Can you hear me fine? Am I still quite choppy?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. It must be the interwebs here. So a lot of my research, like if you look into imposter syndrome and behavioral science, kind of going back into the 1970s, imposter syndrome or phenomenon, whatever you'd like to call it, seems to be a situation that they thought originated with women and was only in women. So there is this kind of, they thought, now it is quite kind of naturally spread between both genders and also across all different kind of diverse backgrounds. But it is one of the things that is, I think, something that does kind of plague women because of the level of culture that kind of goes into that. And I think that's kind of what seems to be the common thread through what we've been talking from the very beginning about kind of equality and bias within the workplace, and then obviously into this kind of imposter syndrome. It's this idea that women are being asked of a level of perfection or a level of results that seem to be not necessarily fair. So, and there's this kind of, you have to do it all. I think that goes kind of a little bit back to that 1950s housewife where everything was perfect and clean, and dinner was made, and they looked like they came out of a Maybelline ad. And I think kind of has pushed itself into our, is still kind of prevalent, but prevalent in different ways. So if you go into the business place, it's prevalent in how you dress and how you purport yourself. You have to be meek enough, but confident enough. You have to be well put together, but also a bit, kind of funky, and be able to, have that conservative side and that other side. So I think there's a lot of expectation there culturally across time that has really kind of led to where we're at now. Now, I think it's changing. I think with some of the, just over time, the younger generations have it not easier necessarily, but the thought processes are changing, but they're still going into the workplace and into L&D, and a lot of this still remains.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we get into that imposter syndrome of that feeling like we have to be up to a certain standard that we're not at, whether that be creatively or, just in the sense of what we're producing, what value we're providing. For me, it's, do I know enough? So I over-research for that reason, everything, to make sure that I'm well prepared for every situation. And I think it is personal pressure, but that pressure comes from somewhere.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. And it's just fascinating to me that so many of us, we have so many different backgrounds, but it sounds like a lot of us, we are experiencing similar issues, right? And I don't necessarily want to just blame it on, different genders and that. It's just, I think the different experiences that we've had, right? And I don't know if that's generational. I don't know if it's just kind of steeped in history or tradition, but I just think it's fascinating, and I think we just scraped the surface of talking about it. But
Cara, I think what you'll find as well, that women are the best and worst critics of women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if we could see everybody in the chat, their heads would be going, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And of ourselves. I think we're also the worst critics of ourselves, too, as well as other women.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
We need to
Tricia,
stop being so hard on each other.
Yes.
And I think also what we're so good at is saying, yay, you go, girl, or a version of that to each other, but then go, oh, but not me, I mustn't be arrogant. And I updated my blog today because I had exactly that conversation with someone. She'd go, I've got a keynote, but I mustn't get too excited about it. And I'm just like, oh my God, you got a keynote, girl, go for it. And that's something that's that self-deprecatingness, that's that worry about being arrogant, how we come across, and that whole societal kind of issue, which is probably where we're going to be moving towards in the sense of, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
But I shall hand back to Cara on that note.
All right, I'm going to tell Tricia, see you later. Bring Toddi back
guys.
in. And we are going to be talking about some solutions. So we've talked about a lot of issues, but we really need to focus on how can this be fixed and what can be done in a workplace to make it not inclusive for just women, but for everybody. Bethany or Joe, whoever wants to start on that as I bring Toddi in.
Joe, do you want to? Okay. For me, I mean, I'm in my anthropology lens, I'm a culture girl. So it has to be about the culture that's being set up within the workplace. And that is more than just, okay, we'll put in our value system that we love diversity and that we support it, but it has to be in the action that's taken. So that means, I think, equal pay is the first thing on the list there, making sure that people coming in are being paid exactly for what their contribution to the business is, and that's equal across gender and all of kind of the other things that make us diverse. And then, the second thing to come is really kind of making sure that the unconscious bias is being impacted. So really kind of being aware of that. And then also, funnily enough, teaching people to understand and realize that that unconscious bias does exist and how to kind of prevent that from happening within kind of recruitment situations and when you're also providing people kind of raises and for their positions within the companies. I'm thankfully in a company that is ran by women and has been for 20 years, in learning and development, but not everybody gets that chance. So it's making sure that the representation is there regardless, as much as possible.
Toddi, Joe?
So I think there's lots of different elements to this challenge. And it's such a big issue because it's such a big challenge around pay, around equality, and that's in different cultures, different environments, different countries. So it can be a huge Pandora's box that we're opening in terms of societal and cultural, historic, political things that we're looking at. To put that to one side, as if one can, and then focus on where are the successes and what can be done. I think what we need to be looking at in the first instance is what we can take responsibility for ourselves right now as women and helping the women around us. And go actually by helping all of the people around us. Because I was saying in the chat just now, this isn't just a female problem. This is a society problem. It's a human problem. And whilst we might be focusing on the female element of it right now, we could equally be having this conversation about different cultures, about different races, about different, all the differences that we have in humanity, as well as then looking at kind of age and different parts of our careers. You can slice and dice this any which way you want and probably come up with a similar challenge that we're dealing with. So we need to take responsibility for ourselves. We need to listen to feedback, act on the things that we think are actually really important rather than perhaps being mean. We need to help ourselves and other people. And things like these conferences these conversations are really important to do that. And from these conversations I've had throughout today, somebody was giving me feedback this morning actually saying, you are really self-deprecating and you kind of think you're doing it in a funny way, but actually it's really impacting potentially how people are seeing you and how you're seeing yourself. And I was just like, wow, okay, so I've got to stop that, because in myself I feel confident. But going back to that, I don't want to feel arrogant. I don't want to feel big-headed. I don't want people to look at me and go, who does she think she is? Which is where self-deprecating comes from. So if we can receive that feedback, look at it honestly, and then go, okay, how can I adapt that behavior? And then start helping the other people around us, that will start flowing out. And then you get into the bigger things about organization, culture, and the responsibility that we have at different seniorities in order to make those changes.
Right.
Quick, I want to give you a chance to respond, and then we have several questions that I'd like to get to. So get quick and impactful.
Well, a couple of things. I want to actually second a couple of things that both of you said. I think it's really important to have your authentic voice out there and to not be afraid to use it. I've written a lot, and I haven't been speaking, and I should probably get onto the speaker circuit, because I think it's important for our voices to be heard. But I've written things that have actually impacted me negatively, especially in the hiring scenario, and I'm okay with that. I really am. If somebody doesn't like what I've written or the perspective I put out there, that's all right. I don't want to work for them. I don't want to work with them. So the other piece of it too, and we need to bring everyone along. This isn't just a female problem. I've worked with a lot of teams with men, and I think it's really important to make sure that when we surface our projects, that we surface them as our projects. And, I think that's where I did so well with iRobot, is because I had wonderful men that I worked with, and they would say, hey, your stamp is on this project. I'm like, no, it's our stamp on this project. We all worked on it. You were the trainer. I was the one who developed it, project management, and, somebody else may have done the programming. So, I think we all rise up when we all go together, and that's men and women together. Anyway, that's kind of my summary.
Excellent stopping point. And I want to go ahead and get to the chat. So looks like based on votes, the first results, if you ever have to choose an avatar or coach in games, do you pick female, male, or neutral, and why? For me, it depends on the game. I care about who's got the best attributes to get me through the game. And if that's the female, I'm going to pick the female. If it's the male, I'll pick the male. Great example, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. You could choose between twin assassins, Jacob and Evie Fry. I would have played the entire game as Evie if I could, although some of them, the missions, you had to pick the other twin, but the reason I liked her is because she was more sneaky, and that's the way that I like to play the game. So that's my answer. I pick whatever is best for what I want to do with the game. What about everyone else?
Yep, agreed. I think where you've got different character traits or vehicle traits or whatever it might be, you have to go with what you think that is. But the trouble is there's an engendered bias in that. It's just like, well, this character does it this way, that character does it that way. Is that right? I don't know. If it's not to do with skill and it's just literally an avatar, I depend on my mood. I'd probably go for the funky princess or something like that, because it's like, well, I'm a girl and I'm going to celebrate that.
So I'm going to differentiate here. Did you all see Jumanji, the new Jumanji, where
no, not the new one, but yeah.
In the new one, the characters' avatars end up being different from what they would be expected to be. And I thought that was the really cool lesson in Jumanji, is that you can rise up to be like a character that you may not otherwise choose, which I thought was kind of cool. I don't know what avatar I would choose. It would probably be whatever has the best characteristics.
Can I join in on this? Yeah, actually, I think it's interesting that we are made to choose between two.
Right.
So for me, I mean, not that I like to kind of represent myself I do it by mood, but it's interesting that even, so we talk about different languages. I know that was something Myra was talking about, but everything is based so much on this kind of two gender way. And it's really quite interesting to see, what comes out of that, especially in video games, on actually providing that option for third gender. So, I mean, these are the things that will kind of help move society forward, is saying, no, it doesn't have to be the two. There's more options there, and there's more ways of explaining and introducing ourselves to people than just the two ways.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point, Bethany.
All right, next question. Where do you find mentors in the field? Twitter. It's where I found a lot of my mentors, and literally just asking questions, being curious. I said something, I think, yesterday to Mike Simmons about my learning and development family tree is stacked full of rock stars. And I really believe that there's a lot of great people out there that's willing to help you. So what do you ladies think? Where do you get your mentors at?
I find that really interesting because I don't have a mentor. And I'm thinking maybe I should have a mentor because other people have mentors and I mentor other people. And I think for me personally, but also maybe there's an element of this for other women as well, is it comes back to not wanting to ask for help or that perfectionism. It's just that actually having a mentor means that I'm weak and that I don't know. And therefore I'm not good enough. So I find that a really interesting psychological argument in my own head, if nowhere else. But if I am going to find one, I think it would be through my network somehow. So probably Twitter, conversation, our Slack group, something like that, to find someone that I feel comfortable with, because it is about sharing and being honest and things like that.
Yeah, my first mentor was kind of an official mentor at Raytheon. She was a woman engineer, and she was amazing. And I probably learned more from Lisa than anybody I've ever worked with. So I was very fortunate in that way. I do look for mentors now amongst my peer groups. I have a couple of folks in my master's classes who I think are amazing. And then there are people like Mel, who, I mean, if there's one person in this group I could be like, it would be Mel, just letting you know, because the things that she's doing to put out, the amount of work that she's doing, what she's okay putting things out there that aren't finished or perfected to show her process. I think that is just so important for us to be able to kind of show the path that we're taking to move forward in our work, rather than having to, thinking that we have to have everything perfect before we present.
What about you, Bethany?
I think, that I found most of the people that inspire me via Twitter and through TLDcast. And I mean, I think out of you three, the people that I get to share this the screen with / audio with is kind of the people that I look up to. But I think as well, it's looking at who you'd want to be, if that sounds really bad or creepy, sorry guys, but I think in the sense of like where you aspire to in your career or and what you're doing and what they do, and just looking at that and going, great, I would love to do that too. And that's what I would think. And then any relationship I think can be some sort of a mentorship. It maybe just not as formal as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And we have 2 more questions. I'm going to speed round real quick. How do you find the time and funding for master's PhD? How do you balance it with full-time job and family? Real quick, I work at a university for the free tuition, sorry. And my husband is a rock star and supports me 110% for everything.
I've got my own business, so the money that I would invest in my master's, to be honest, I think is better off invested in my business or with other stuff, so I don't do it. If you're in a bigger organization, I would try and get sponsorship that way.
I waited until my daughter was almost done with her college degree before I started my master's, so that I only have tuition going out for one person at a time.
Bethany, anything to add to that?
Loans. But also it sucks, so maybe not do that unless you're going to get a proper job out of it. I don't know. I think we're in a cool field where you might not necessarily need that degree. It's about kind of what you produce and what experience you have, and it's definitely going to help to have that degree. And if that's your focus, do it, make it happen. But then also, if it can't happen because you don't have money like me, then make it work somehow else. Like work really hard to get experience doing all the stuff.
I tap a lot of my work for my projects at school. That they became great fodder for a lot of things I need to do.
All right, and last question from Sean that I see here. How do you respond to benevolent sexism in the workplace, and what if it's coming from other women? Last year, I dedicated that year to my haters, people that underestimated me and didn't think I could do anything. I wanted to show them what I could bring to the table. I put myself out there. I spoke, I shared, I saw, I conquered, I got published, and yeah, so just show them and back up what you know that you have. So what do you think, Joe?
I think if it comes from a place of kindness and goodness, then that's pretty awesome. But things can still come out in the wrong way. So we always have to then tackle things from the point of view of what is good and real for me and for the people around me. And I don't think it's a wrong thing to accept a helping hand, as long as you can then provide that helping hand to someone else.
And be authentic. I mean, we talked about that before, but I think it's important to be proud of the voice that you have and what you have to say. You'll have people who don't like what you have to say. I mean, that's just going to happen.
Agreed with all.
All right, it's the top of the hour. I mean, this flew, right? This was wonderful. So thank you, everybody that was part of this today. Panelists, if you would just drop your name and contact information where you're at in the chat, the way everybody can connect with us. And again, we do this every day, Monday through Friday, same time, same place. Hook up with us on the Slack channel if you'd like to continue this conversation. Please share this recording with friends and people that couldn't be here, and hope you have a great Friday. And I'm going to go ahead and close out the videos of everybody, and we'll keep it going. So thank you guys so much. This was so fun.